Want convenient banking features like mobile check deposit? Whitney Bank's mobile app has you covered. Start by opening your checking account online at HancockWhitney.com. Then download the app to bank anytime, anywhere. Member FDIC.
Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker. Established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Business First Bank, with locations throughout the state, including 11 offices in the Baton Rouge area, providing personal and commercial banking, treasury management, and wealth solution services to help clients succeed. Business First Bank, banking with greater momentum.
From Mansell's on the Boulevard in Baton Rouge, we're out to lunch with the editor of the Baton Rouge Business Report, Stephanie Regal. It's business Baton Rouge style.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Regal. Welcome to Out to Lunch. This isn't an easy time to be in the business of print or broadcast journalism. Between the competitive pressures posed by the internet and the hue and cry against the fake news media, you have to wonder why anyone would want to be in the business at all. No money, no respect. Is it worth it? My guests today have some unique insights on the subject. Rolf McCollister is the owner of Louisiana Business Inc., a Baton Rouge-based company that publishes the Baton Rouge Business Report, 225 magazine, and In Register, as well as dozens of special publications for contract clients. Rolf is also the consummate entrepreneur. He founded the Business Report, the company's flagship publication, in 1982 when he was just 26, and he still writes an influential and often controversial opinion column in each bi-weekly issue. In the interest of full disclosure, Rolf also happens to be my employer, but that doesn't make him any less interesting of a guest. So Rolf, thanks for being here today.
Glad to be here.
Jim Angster is one of the best-known media figures in Baton Rouge. He is the president and owner of the Louisiana Radio Network, which produces and distributes news content to dozens of affiliates throughout the state. He also produces and hosts 2 daily radio shows, Talk Louisiana on WRKF and The Jim Angster Show on 107.3 FM. He's also the owner of Tiger Rag Magazine, the self-proclaimed Bible of LSU sports. Jim got his start in journalism as an LSU student in the late 1970s. He's been affiliated with the Louisiana Radio Network since the 1980s, and he acquired the network in 2010. And on top of all that, Jim is a political analyst for WAFB-TV, due in part, no doubt, to his encyclopedic knowledge of local politics and state politics. So, Jim, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Rolf, okay, so newspapers are dying, attention spans are getting shorter, nobody wants to read anything long and boring and complicated. So what is the appeal of the Business Report?
Well, I think the idea when you say newspapers, everybody kind of lumps print. And, I think there's a difference between a daily newspaper and magazine specifically. And that's where if you look at our group of publications, we've always gone for a niche. In fact, when we started Business Report, the daily was here, of course, and very strong, and in fact 2 dailies, Morning, Advocates, Daytime. But, business was always an afterthought. On Sunday you could find it in Section D, about 5 pages back behind the grocery ads.
Now it's about Section J.
And so, it got no respect, I guess. But we saw a trend around the country, and it was sort of like Wall Street Journal was all business for the nation, and so business journals were, putting business on the front page, and that's basically what we did. And it's not a mass media, it's very targeted media, and much like you see on the magazine racks. If you like golf, there's a golf magazine, fashion magazine, tennis magazine, food magazines. So our deal is about being in niches and going deep into the subject, sometimes more in depth and all that, because the who, what, where, when you can get anytime, instantly. And in fact, that's why we have the daily report twice a day and with alerts, because people won't wait.
Now, you didn't start out wanting to be a journalist.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I wanted to be a lawyer, and actually I got into, my dad had the North Baton Rouge Journal many years ago. He started when he was 19 and sold that, and then went off to become a lawyer. But yeah, so I just found it very fascinating. I love a variety of interest, and the news changes every day, and stories, and you can really have an impact on the community. But if you're curious, as I was, a good story is just hard to pass. And
Sure.
so, I love being in the know, and everybody wants to know first, and that's sort of what drives the internet now. And in fact, speed sometimes can be a detriment, I guess.
Well, Jim, is that what attracted you to journalism? Did you grow up wanting to be a reporter? 'Cause I know I did.
Well, I grew up listening to the radio, primarily ball games, and I was an only child. My father died when I was young. My mother worked, and I probably heard Jack Buck's voice doing St. Louis Cardinal games more than any other voice during my youth.
Fascinating.
I'm sure it had an impact in the direction I took.
What has been your most interesting interview of all time?
People ask me that, and you really have to categorize them, but one of the most interesting interviews I did was with Immaculée Ilogiza. She's been here a few times. Now, she was trapped in a 12-foot room with 7 other women during the Rwandan Holocaust. And when she got out, she was about 60 pounds. She couldn't talk, otherwise they would be found and killed. But all her family members were killed, and yet she rose above that tragedy and has become one of the most eloquent people on the planet, and that really shows something about the human spirit.
Wow. How do you find the content? I mean, to fill 2 shows a day right now, 3 hours worth of interviews in, let's face it, a town that's big, but not that big.
Yeah, but Louisiana is a great place to cover news. We have 1.4% of the national population, but we generate far more than 1.4% of the national news. Quite often it's not good, but sometimes it is, and we have certainly things in our world that are fascinating not only to us but to other people, and we have a lot of characters. We breed a lot of interesting people, and most of them are willing to come on the air and talk about what's happening.
That's fortunate for you. All right, I want y'all to tell me about the business models of your companies. Jim, explain. The Louisiana Radio Network produces news content that goes out around the state to FM affiliates, AM, public radio?
Well, about 70 affiliates carry our programming, and we do news and farm programming and sports. And with people curtailing their news staffs, we provide a news product for stations large and small across Louisiana at little cost. In fact, no cost to them. The benefit for us is that we receive inventory in return for providing them with the product, and we're able to package it and sell it as a statewide entity. So
your money comes from the ad revenues,
correct,
not from the stations paying
That is
you.
correct, and we're looking for clients that have a statewide footprint. Like somebody who was based solely in Baton Rouge wouldn't be as good of a client as somebody who was doing business in Baton Rouge and the other major markets or rural markets. We're everywhere. There's probably no speck of dirt in Louisiana where our programming cannot be heard.
Now, Rolf, you're not statewide, but you certainly have the Baton Rouge market covered. Started with the Business Report, but now have several publications.
Again, going back to the niches, trying to be very strong in that particular target audience. With In-Register, it's home delivered, focused primarily on lifestyle and a strong women's readership. We also have 225, which is, of course, more of an entertainment city mag that we have. Those are more for the consumer, the B2B with Business Report, targeted business owners. We have a publication, 1012 Industry Report. Goes from Lake Charles all the way to New Orleans down the 1012 corridor, focused on industry. So, a lot of those things, because they're local, it's hard for the national to touch it, because the idea they can't afford staff to cover local news. And there again, because of that, it's not a commodity, so everybody doesn't have it. So again, the readers in those organs, this is the source to get that type of news. And of course, with Daily Report, which ironically, with all the rise of digital, that was started 19 years ago.
That's incredible, isn't it?
As a daily e-newsletter. And that, of course, allows us the opportunity now to get into sectors to where we can have audiences, much like radio, every day. You can access, and advertise, in the morning and the afternoon, for 4 weeks out of the month, versus us having started as a monthly, then becoming bi-weekly, but only having 2 issues. So it gives us more product, it gives us more niches. Again, it's all hyper-local, which again, others, national sites and stuff really can't provide local news.
And some of the publications are free, like 225. Some are subscription, like Business Report. How do you know which one's going to work?
Well, the different models. I mean, the city magazine, you always have the alternative papers that you've had in cities. They're all rack distribution, free distribution, so that's one model. The others, we'd go to a controlled circulation, again, a targeted requester for postal rates and subscriptions. And And now the media, I think one of the things that I see happening around the country is the paywall, because, everything was on the internet was free, so everybody gave it away, and then they realized, whoops, we were giving it away. Why do they need to buy the daily paper if you can get it online? So there are people now going to a paywall where you get X number, the New York Times, the Washington Post, you get a couple free. But then, Jim, freeze up, if you're halfway through the month, and some sell by the articles, some sell subscriptions. So I think you're going to see some changes there because, again, you have to have a model that, that pays for itself.
So, I just know that it's crazy, the speed and the rate at which you have to be changed and trying to keep up with what's going on. You just can't relax for 2 seconds. How are you all coping with it? And, at Louisiana Radio Network, radio faces the same pressures that print does in a different way.
It does, and studies have shown that more people listen to the radio than any other medium.
Really?
Over 96% of the people, and I'm talking traditional radio too. I'm not talking satellite radio. More people listen to the radio than watch television or read newspapers or magazines. But it's not a shiny new thing. It started in 1920, and everybody is looking for the shiny new thing. And I know of nobody who's adapted better to the times in this world than our world than Rolf. He's got the Daily Report, as you mentioned, 19 years, in addition to 225, which really is the model for magazines that are free distribution and advertising pays the freight. But we're doing that with Tiger Rag, which is subscription and free distribution with Tiger Rag Extra. And I must say that I was inspired by your success with 225, that told me that there was a niche in our community for an LSU sports publication.
Yeah, so tell us about Tiger Rag, because you acquired that a few years ago, and it is the self-proclaimed Bible of LSU sports.
Well, we benefit from being the only publication devoted to LSU sports.
Everything.
No Everything is LSU
athletic
sports.
Side as well as the fun side.
Yeah, and we cover board meetings and things that involve the business aspect as well, but it's primarily an LSU sports publication. I've been writing a column for them since 1985, and when I started writing a column, I had no idea that at one point I would be the proprietor, but I like the fact that we have this presence in our community.
That's great. And it goes out all over the country.
Yeah, we have subscribers, I think at last check, in 45 states.
Because people love their LSU sports.
And the LSU Alumni Association, they say their biggest turnout when they have these alumni events is in San Diego, because they've got a lot of LSU grads in California, and when you're in a place where you don't get that constant information, you're thirsting for it, and a lot of our subscribers are in places like San Diego and Los Angeles.
Fantastic. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Stephanie Riegel. We're talking to Jim Engster of the Louisiana Radio Network and publisher Rolf McCollister of Louisiana Business, Inc. So I mentioned at the beginning about the fake news media and the credibility issues that the media has today, thanks in part to our president and to organizations like Fox News, which have branded the rest of the mainstream media as incredulous for some reason. But Rolf, how does this affect business, and how do we gain trust back?
Well, it is really disconcerting to see just, on one hand, it's great to have access so everybody can use the internet. It's wonderful free speech. But the stuff that goes out sometimes is just, like I said, just astounding to me. And for the reader, it's hard to distinguish sometimes. It's all on the internet. It's all posted on Facebook. It's all on Twitter. So it's like, now there's your Twitter and there's the president's Twitter. Okay, now, separate the two, or a news source. And so that's where I think the idea of hopefully it's going to get back to what's the source, and those brands and all that. I got to be able to trust something, and, what can I trust? I have friends that forward me emails, that are one of these that you see that's a scam. I'm going, why are you sending me this? Well, did you see they're going to release all the cell phone numbers? And it's like, no, that's not true. But they're like, well, I didn't check it. I just got it from here and I passed it on. And so this is the kind of thing that I'm thinking, again, how the internet is become so powerful. But where does it pull back? Is everything free? No, everything's not going to be free anymore. What's going to be, trusted, and what isn't going to be trusted? How can you tell the difference? Because, people are turning to them, and they definitely keep that phone in their hand, and they look at it.
The problem is that people no longer trust institutions. There's no single unifying institution that people will trust, right? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's true. I think from the presidency on down is that we have a different perception about that than we did before. And some of it may be attributable to what's going on in the media. Anybody can be a reporter now, and as we've seen, a lot of the stories they're not true. And I think most of the stories that we read in the mainstream publications and see on mainstream network television and radio, they are true. And the president knows that, but he's been able to use this fake news mantra against his enemies. I spoke with Dean Baquet on our show on WRKF earlier this week, and he said that the president is actually one of the most accessible people they've ever encountered as far as returning phone calls and talking to reporters. And at the same time, he's providing this unusual access. Remember that press conference a few weeks ago with the New York Times reporters? He's out there on the stump blasting the so-called fake media.
It's such a paradox.
Because it plays well to his audience, his base. And right now, his base is what he has. Now, that may change. He were only 6 months into his term, but right now, his base is his salvation.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, for instance, you have many news organizations that actually use video from citizens. So they send it in and they're able to say, hey, here we have a video, which of course gives it credibility. Then you have other people that take a video and post it. And it's like, wait a second, if it was good enough for the news, why can't, so it's kind of like, can you have it both ways? Because then people are putting up stuff. And so it's back to that distinguish. Now we know hopefully the news stations are vetting it and so forth before they put it on. But, one of the problems I think the traditional media had was during the election to miss the election, as far as who won so bad that they weren't doing the reporting and tapping into what was happening across the country. So you would say, you're going to get the story right, and they didn't. And so now it's like, well, can we trust you to get the story right because you're out of touch? And I think that really hurt a lot of folks. And was it a question if they weren't doing their job or they just wanted a different outcome and they wanted to, I don't know, but I think that was a big setback.
Do you all find that the credibility issues have any impact on sales? Are there any advertisers in this market that say, I don't want to be in the business report or on Louisiana Radio Network anymore because I don't like the media anymore?
I don't think that's the case.
That's
Not
good.
yet anyway. It could become the case, but I'm sure there are people who advertise in a certain place because they enjoy the product. And right now we're in an environment where some media entities now have a political ideology attached to it. Like MSNBC is known as the liberal cable network and Fox is the conservative. And as a result, that affects who they're going to get or not receive as an advertiser.
And I think that's more about the audience that they attract. If you're trying to look into the demographics, if that's what they're watching, then you get on. I think sometimes there's an affinity by the particular advertiser, but for the most part, a business is business, and you're not, you might avoid it for a while because you're upset or whatever, but after a while, you're there in business to be successful, and so hopefully you don't cut off your nose to spite your face.
So you all both have multiple products, speaking of business, that you're selling. A limited market here, and everybody's knocking on the same doors, and you've got a couple of sales staffs, 3 or 4 sales staffs selling publications. How do you keep from cannibalizing your own, advertisers there? And what's the key to, how many times can you go to Turner Industry or to Mike Walpole's Hotel?
Yeah, again, it's back to niches. If some of our advertisers that may want all 3 audiences. They want the in-register, they want 225 audiences, the younger audience, they want, a business report. And so we have some advertisers that buy across, just like they would buy multiple radio stations or they might buy multiple TV stations, Obviously, political candidates want every vote, so they use everything. But it depends on that, and it's sort of what's best serves that business to help them be successful. So which venue, which audience, demographics play a part. Advertisers are wanting more information because they want to hit the target. They want to bring in customers and grow their business. So and we've tried to be different. So if somebody wants a specific, they don't necessarily buy, which is traditional, the mass media. With something like the Daily, you've got everybody. But, is everybody your customer? And that was where Business Report was like, you want CEOs, you want business owners, you don't have to buy everything to get 10%.
What about you, Jim?
And I think there's an opportunity for what Ralph does and what we do, because newspaper circulation is way down.
Way down.
And people, they're buying numbers in some cases, and the numbers for newspapers are down. And television has remained constant as a force, but now people have these devices where they're skipping past the commercials when they tape their favorite program, so they're not even seeing the commercials. But I think when somebody picks up a copy of Business Report or 225 or Tiger Rag, they're going to see the ads. And when somebody listens to our news, they're going to hear the ads. And so I think we've got a place at the table which remains substantial.
Jim, how do you divide your time between being a business person and still being a journalist?
Well, it's sometimes a balancing act, because there are just so many hours in the day, and you have to think about what is most important. And in my case, one of the most important thing is our business. Without that, nothing else is really important. But I love doing the shows, and I love being a part of the conversation. So I'd like to continue doing this for a little while, and we'll see how it works out.
Well, I want to take a break real quick and sort of switch gears. Y'all, maybe this will illuminate your personalities a little bit more, not that we haven't gotten a good feel for you already, but tell me, what is the most influential or important book you've read in the past year, say, and why?
There's one that I'm reading now. It's called Chasing Daylight, and it's about a successful CEO that found out that he has cancer. And so the idea is he changes his perspective because he has a limited time left. And so you really start to evaluate priorities, and he kind of, turns the company over. I mean, he was the head, and so he quickly makes transition, and then he starts focusing and spending time and doing things with the
things that
people
really
they
matter.
love. Yeah, and so it's kind of like, wow, I have the time. So now, so it's something, makes you stop, because again, I've been doing this a long time now, over 40 years since I first got into the media, and 35 now years this year with Business Report. But you got to stop and smell the roses, and enjoy the time, because I've been to funerals of friends who are 50-something years old, and their wives tell me we were just a few years away from retiring, getting ready to start traveling, and we never got to do that.
I interviewed a gentleman who's written a book called Fitter, Faster.
I like that.
So
I like
Stephanie,
that.
I know you're into physical fitness, and that's another thing. I think with our obligations, it's always important to work out and stay physically fit. And this guy had some interesting observations about aerobic activity can be actually more beneficial, weight training can be more efficient than aerobic activity.
Okay.
But there's a balance, need both. And I was in a car accident 13 years ago, and it's kind of changed my workout habits, but I've tried to stay the course, and I think it's important to be somewhat physically fit and be behind that microphone. You never know what's going to happen.
That's right. You're doing a good job. You mentioned Baton Rouge, Rolf, and how it had changed. What have been some of the biggest changes that y'all have seen in your years here? And is this a good place to do business, and what could we do better?
Well, really in Louisiana, and Jim may know more about the state, but having looked at the state as a whole, I mean, the corridor is definitely, sort of the place to be, but specifically Baton Rouge is the hot spot. We have all the numbers. I mean, Lake Charles is certainly doing well right now, but, I think Baton Rouge is the strongest market by far. Lafayette is certainly struggling. New Orleans has got a lot of activity, but, hasn't ever come back to where it was pre-Katrina. But I think that, for me, I've just seen Baton Rouge over the years. It moved, and I was talking to some people in another city, and how, I stopped at Krispy Kreme the other day on the way to the airport, on Plank Road. And, I know, I wasn't thinking about that book at the time, but having a Krispy Kreme, and man, Plank Road used to be a thriving spot. My uncle had a grocery store, Food Town, up there on the corner of Plank and Airline, and there was just so much activity. As I said, my dad graduated from a Struma. But, to see the change, all the car dealers are all now south, along Airline Highway, and to watch them move over the years, to watch Cortana Mall, which was one of the highest producing malls in the country, when it was built, to now being sold for $7 million, and having the Sears close and the Penny's close.
And the Macy's.
It's like, whoa, man, this is just Florida Boulevard used to be active, and I am happy to see downtown, because in my day growing up, downtown was thriving, and it died for that 20 years, and then it's come back strong. So things can change. I mean, what they're doing with the Entergy building on, Government Street now, to see that infill happening in the housing downtown. So I'm seeing some good trends, the riverfront and all that. Got to even tour the dock the other day with the Water Institute. There will be a renovation of the dock and a new building, and that eyesore going very soon. So, those kind of things I've seen that are exciting. I mean, I think, again, for business, it's definitely, I hear a lot of things coming, as far as industry still, the LNG and those projects. So I think the corridor, and particularly Southwest Louisiana, going to be strong. A lot of our businesses here benefit because they build those plants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the good thing, and they've done a lot of business. And I even talked to one who says he does business all over the country now, because he did such a good job here that these different plants and industries use them elsewhere. So it's really helped our local companies boom. So.
What about you, Jim?
Well, I worked downtown from 1983 to 2003, and most of those years
Those were the dead years.
You could shoot a cannon down 3rd Street and not hit anybody, and so it's blossomed. And it really is a special place, and it's a place in Baton Rouge where you can see people of all kinds mingling together, which is good.
Which is not the situation in all parts of Baton Rouge.
That's true. But we need to replicate that. Yeah. And there's a magic there that needs to be bottled and put elsewhere. But to this point, we've got some challenges in other parts of town. And as Rolf said, a lot of it is just a shift. It went from downtown to Cortana, now back to downtown, and let's hope we keep the good things and improve the things we need to.
Well, I would love to talk about this all day, because now it's really getting good, but unfortunately we have to go. So Rolf McCollister and Jim Angster, you all are media icons in this community and bring unique insights and products to the market. Thanks for sharing your insights today on Out to Lunch.
Thank you,
Thank you, Stephanie.
My guests today on Out to Lunch have been Rolf McCollister, owner of Louisiana Business Inc., and Jim Angster, owner of the Louisiana Radio Network. You can find out more about Louisiana Business Inc. and the Louisiana Radio Network by following the links on our website. It's batonrouge.la and wrkf.org. Today's show was recorded live over lunch at Mansur's on the Boulevard in Baton Rouge. Mansur's is open for lunch daily from 11 to 2, for dinner nightly, and for brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Merle. Our associate producer is Peter Raschuti. And our Baton Rouge business consultants are Charlie D'Agostino and Ann Edelman. You can see photos from this show on its batonrouge.la and on our Facebook page. These photos are taken by Ken Stewart. All the music on Out to Lunch is composed and performed by Mitchell Foreman. You can find more of Mitchell's music wherever great jazz is streamed or sold, and at mitchellforeman.com. You can get the show as a podcast, you can listen to past shows, and you can keep up with us on all kinds of social media by going to our websites. It's batonrouge.la and wrkf.org. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for It's Baton Rouge.la and WRKF 89.3 FM. I'm Stephanie Riegel. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you again next week around the table here at Mansur's for more business Baton Rouge style on Out to Lunch.
Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker. Established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com, and by Business First Bank, with locations throughout the state, including 11 offices in the Baton Rouge area, providing personal and commercial banking, treasury management, and wealth solution services to help clients succeed. Business First Bank, banking with greater momentum.
Want convenient banking features like mobile check deposit? Whitney Bank's mobile app has you covered. Start by opening your checking account online at HancockWhitney.com. Then download the app to bank anytime, anywhere. Member FDIC.